Yes, a good God indeed, a God who pitied his children. 23rd of December, 1983, two university students, 1983 Christmas season is somewhat similar to the current winter season. And those of you who have connection with Canada and America know that it's a cold time. 23rd of December 1983, two university students were exploring New York, Boston, New York, and Washington. So my friend CF and I, we were staying in somebody's house in Brooklyn. Both of us didn't know. Okay? Somebody that his professor introduced. His professor's friend. So we were staying in Brooklyn. And, I was a young lad and I wasn't in medical school yet. And I was lucky enough to be born into a family without anyone having what we call bronchial asthma. Asthma? In 1983, I didn't know what is an asthmatic attack like. And my friend, my schoolmate of many years, he was schoolmate with me since 1973, I think. No, let me think. Maybe 1975. So we were already friends for 8 years. And this guy I was wondering, there was no football field. We did not play soccer, or American called soccer. So we did not play soccer. It was winter. You can't just go out to play. We were not running around. And while he was breathing like he has... And, we were in an unfamiliar big city. New York City then was not a small city. What to do? We were staying in a stranger's home. Interestingly, they were open to having strangers staying in their home. Right? The couple didn't know us. We didn't know them. They knew CF's professor. Yeah, that's the connection. Yeah. And those days, there's no FaceTime, no WhatsApp, or, so I'm not sure if his professor sent his photographs to the friend or not. Yeah. So he was, I really wonder, why was he so breathless, like just finished a half marathon, a 10K run. Yeah. And what to do? And I remember, for those of you who are old enough, something called Yellow Pages. Yellow Pages. Yeah, there was no website for you to search for clinics and pharmacy, how to get medicine. So, Yellow Pages. In the Yellow Pages, I went and looked for S. Look for S. And do you know what I was looking for? Seventh-day Adventist Community Services. Seventh-day Adventist Community Services. In a big city, in a cold winter, one of the coldest winter around that time, what to do? And my friend was ill. Luckily, he didn't turn blue yet, okay? But he was really breathless. I called Seventh-day Adventist Community Services in a strange foreign land, and where I didn't know, I didn't know anybody else except my friend. We were supposed to be going around the Liberty Island, the Statue of Liberty, the World Trade Center. Then the two towers were still there. And, in the end, he actually never went up to World Trade Center because he had asthmatic attack. So in his life, he has never got to get up to it. I called Seventh-day Adventist Community Services. And I got help. And I took him to a Seventh-day Adventist physician. I believe there is a highway, big boulevard called Kingsway, I think. I have not tried to check. And I took my friend with the taxi and to the doctor. I regretted didn't write down his name and didn't take photograph with that doctor. But he very kindly gave my friend an injection. I don't think it's adrenaline. It must be some Ventolin or something. And then gave us a prescription without charging us. And my friend must be hypoxia, lack of oxygen. He didn't remember all this. He didn't remember. Recently, he came to visit us, and we have a meal together with my family, his family, with my family. He took his eldest son to Penang Medical College, and he didn't remember all this. Well, he remembered he was very ill, that's all. And there was a cat, not in the head, but in that apartment we live in. We stay in, It's not a B&B, it was a free stay. We had a free stay. But the cat was running around and there was no bed. The bedroom has no doors too. Had no doors. So the cat was running around. Cats in cold countries are very cute. Very furry. Really will trigger asthmatic attack. Yes. Seventh-day Adventist Church is an international church. And when I get this preaching appointment, I was thinking of what to share with you that may inspire you. And when the head elder told me that, this is a special Sabbath, it's the International Women's Day for the church. So I decided to check on the website, our international church, and found that there is a sermon for this Sabbath on God Understands. It's a lady. The author is a lady, Chantal Campbell. In the Bible, there are many amazing prayers, powerful prayers. And not only powerful prayers, also answers to prayer. Amazing answers to prayers. And now, I would like to share with you one of those amazing prayers and the answers to prayer. The story is a familiar one. It is found in 1 Kings 18. I'll just review the story with you. It is about the story of the prophet Elijah. Prophet Elijah was a prophet of the northern kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Israel was run by a series of kings, and most of the kings were not faithful in worshipping the true God of Abraham or Jehovah. So the king during Prophet Elijah time, King Ahab, was one of those that was not faithful. And so Elijah was sent to correct the situation. When the leader was not faithful, there was very great apostasy in the country of Israel. People were worshipping all kinds of God. Like people were worshipping, those time, maybe the Facebook of those time, the Bitcoin of those time, and whatnot of those time. Just like in our situation, there are many, many gods in the society. So Prophet Elijah was sent to revive the church, to warn the leader, King Ahab. So Elijah told King Ahab to have a meeting, have a big country meeting on top of a mountain called Mount Carmel. And this is a prayer on top of Mount Carmel. So on top of Mount Carmel, when actually many religious leaders plus the king and the people came, then Elijah spoke to the people. Come near me, all you Israel. So all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, the altar of God. Elijah took 12 different stones and arranged them. The 12 different stones representing the whole of the Israel. whole of the 12 tribes of Israel. And he used these stones to build the altar, an altar in the name of the Lord, repairing the old altar for God. And he made a trench surrounding the altar. And he arranged all the wood. He collected the wood and arranged the wood, and he did a sacrifice of a bull. Cut the bull into pieces and lay them on the wood. I think you are familiar with the story. He was going to pray. He's going to pray. He's challenged the priest of the other region. He's going to pray for God, for the true God to show himself. And that is an amazing prayer. In the 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 36 onward, that's the amazing, simple, totally no-frill prayer. It's not long, it's not elegant, but it is very, very sincere. Lord God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that these people may know that you are the Lord God, you are the one true God, and that thou hast turned their hearts back to you again. Such a simple, sincere, and powerful prayer. And indeed, God heard Elijah's prayer and sent the fire down. It was so instant, it was so amazing. Not only it was a powerful prayer, but it was also an amazing answer. Immediate answer. Dramatic answer. And that's not the end of the powerful prayer. That's not the end of the answer from God. Because in verse 42, Elijah had to continue to pray. I think for those of you who remember, it was the end of a long 3 years drought. And the challenge on top of Mount Carmel is not just about the fire coming down from heaven, but it was also calling the rain to come back to nourish the land, the country of Israel. You know, those days, actually, people depend on agriculture and livestock, and they really need the rain. And 3 years without rain really is a trouble for the whole country. So Elijah, after he was not so amused or so entertained by just the fire coming down and be proud of the answer that God has given to him. But he knew he needed to pray for rain for the people. So he went back up to Mount Carmel and prayed. Pray for rain. However, there's no more immediate, instant answer to his prayer. He prayed one time. He sent his servant to look. There was no sign of rain, no sign of clouds. It was still clear sky. Second time, third time, fourth time, he had to pray 7 times. The prophet had to pray 7 times before his servant saw a small sign, a sign of a small cloud, the size of a palm, rising from the sea in the west. And Elijah had faith to know that God had answered his prayer. He quickly ran. I think you remember Saul. He quickly ran and told King Ahab to return to Samaria because the rain was going to fall. Elijah knew about prayer. He knew how to ask. Elijah knew how to persist. Elijah knew how to wait. Elijah knew how to respond to the sign of the answer. Perhaps some of us, if not most of us, have experienced this kind of dramatic, amazing powerful prayer and the dramatic answer. We might have prayed for someone and they got well. Maybe after church, we drop by ICU, we find that May's father, Mr. Lim, started talking. Amazing prayer, amazing answer. But then again, I think maybe you struggle to recall any big answer to your prayers in the past. Those of you who like to listen to the answer to prayer, please join us in the Google Hangout on Wednesday evening. We have many, many answers to prayers. We have Google Hangout prayer meeting on Wednesday evening. The IT age, we need to use IT platform too for the church to keep this church, Penang English Seventh-day Adventist Church, in the forefront in the modern age, 21st century church. So we do use Google Hangout as a prayer meeting platform. And if you join us, you will experience and listen to the God big answers to prayer. But what you like is to have your personal prayer being answered. A big answer, powerful prayer, and amazing answers. And you prayed. Maybe you have experienced that you prayed and you just didn't get that kind of answer. You pray for the revelation of God's will in what you should study, maybe the job you should get, maybe a friend should get better, but yet you are confused why there's no amazing answer like what is found in 1 Kings chapter 18. Did Elijah's prayer always been answered? Was Elijah's prayers always been answered just like that? Instant, always positively? Well, maybe a few of us can identify with the Elijahs on the Mount Carmel. But probably a lot more of us can identify ourselves with Elijah after Mount Carmel. Yeah, what happened after Mount Carmel? What happened after the rain? The Queen Jezebel was so angry that she sent a messenger to warn the prophet. The prophet who was so tired after the whole day hanging around on top of Mount Carmel and running after the chariot of the king Ahab. He was tired. So when he got up from sleep, he had a warning that Queen Jezebel is going to get after him for his life. And what did he do? What happened to him? Sometimes we are more like the Elijah after Mount Carmel. We ran. Elijah was completely drained, emotionally, physically. He ran after chariot. And he was, so hyped up on Mount Carmel that when God answered him so dramatically, emotionally he was so high. And physically he spent so much of his energy. So when after the warning, this just triggered a sudden descent into an emotional down, into a depression, into a dark depression. And what do we do? Sometimes, Elijah, what was the Elijah response? Elijah ran. He became afraid. He had a sudden fear. He had a panic attack because he got this warning from King Jezebel. He was not afraid of the king Ahab, but he was afraid of Queen Jezebel. He was even afraid of the messenger of Queen Jezebel. He was just even afraid of the message from a lady. And what was his response? He had a real panic attack that triggered him to run. He ran even longer than an ultra marathon. He ran 150 kilometers non-stop. He ran. And sometimes when we have problems, just like Elijah after Mount Carmel, we also ran. We also ran to different places. We may run to refrigerator and look for our comfort food. We may run to something else, even some chemical to calm ourselves down. Because it is just a natural response that we will have to run. We will have to run. We have to run to something. We have to run to someone. And it's probably more right if we run to someone like God or someone that's spiritual that will help you. Because when in the time that's spiritually dry, that we are spiritually dry, we can see that depression can slowly and quietly seep in, take hold of us. And when we recognize it, it could have been so tight that we cannot breathe. And sometimes we could not think straight. We could not even think of going to God. We just need to go to something else for help. And that's something or someone, maybe good spiritual prayer buddies, or your pastor, or your spiritual guardians. And let's see how Elijah, this man of God, react in 1 Kings chapter 19. In 1 Kings chapter 19, we know that actually, we learn that Elijah begins to run, and there's a first step when depression creep in. It is always a natural response to run. And sometimes we bury ourselves into more work, more deadlines, more appointments, and we try harder to run away from the nameless things that is draining away our joy and hope. Right. So Elijah not only ran 150 kilometers, he ran further beyond Beersheba, another day's journey. He ran until he ran out of breath, until he was so tired, until he had to sleep, until he had the breaking point. So he was under a broom tree. And when he sat down and thought over his own life, then guilt began to come in and crushing on into him. He realized that his lack of trust in God has hijacked what could have been the greatest opportunity for a revival in the nation of Israel. He realized that he has disappointed those who needed him most to support them spiritually in Samaria. And now, some 200 kilometers away, he was powerless to do anything about it. And that's terrible, isn't it? So he prayed this terrible prayer. Depressed prayer. Gloomy prayer. It is enough, Lord. Now take my life away. For I am no better than my father. I am no better than those people in Samaria. You know, the guy who 2-3 days ago just actually called fire down from heaven. Now pray this prayer of desperation. It's too much. It's too much for him. You know, he couldn't take it anymore. He's no better. So our great prayer warrior is praying to die. He was so remorseful about his failure that he was giving up. He was really giving up. Can you identify with the Elijah under the broom tree? Can you identify yourself with the Elijah after Mount Carmel? Have you felt like giving up before? Have you ever felt that you have messed up so badly that there's no point to try again? Have you ever felt so tired, so trapped? No more options in life, and you just want to give up? Well, you know at least there's one prophet, one spiritual giant in the Old Testament that have the same experience with you. And it's not just so. If you read biographies of many patriarchs, prophets of old, even the modern days missionaries, you find that they would go through various periods of challenges in their life, depressions. But yet there is good news. God knew just how to deal with Elijah, so God knows how to deal with you. For God understands. A very nice quote from the Step to Christ says, we may have no remarkable evidence that at the time that the face of Redeemer is bending over us in compassion and love. But this is even so. During those difficult times, the face of Redeemer is bending over us. We may not feel His visible touch, but His hands is upon us in love and pitying tenderness. He loves us, especially on those times. You know, at the lowest time, actually, God even care more. God even get closest to us. And that is really my personal experience. And God does more than just empathize. You know, in the experience of Elijah, he did not just only empathize and say, I'm sorry for you, you know. He gave some practical short-term help. In Elijah's case, angels came, prepared him some food, gave him some water. That's what he need, physical need. And that's what I think some of you did during our family time of sorrow, our grieving at the loss of our daughters. You all came every night for a week to provide us food and be with us. The help could be from a friend, and just like from the church families, or from a counselor, or from a family member. Someone whose words and actions show that God cares. God cares about you. And not only so, God provide him rest. God knows that all the running made Elijah tired. God also knows that more than being physically tired, Elijah is emotionally tired and carrying a great load of guilt. God wants to wipe off that guilt, wipe off his mental stress, and give Elijah a good rest. So Elijah slept and be refreshed. When we truly accept that God has forgiven us, then we don't have to drag along with the load of guilt and load of care. You know, we can cast all our burden on the cross of Calvary. Then we can begin to have the rest in our mind, rest in our bodies. Then healing can take place. Well, sometimes healing is amazing, is miraculous, but more often healing takes time. Even after the angel's food, Elijah is not instantly back to normal. God remembers that we are dust, just like our scripture reading in Psalm 103. We are dust, we are really dust. We just could not handle all this stress. So God does not rush healing in us. God gives Elijah time to recover. Recovery usually takes time. We need those quiet moments alone with God. We need time with His Word. We need to take the time to speak to God, even if in doing so we don't feel immediate change for the better. God understands that life in this sinful world can be very challenging and very often will cause depression, cause us to have panic attack, anxiety. He understands our impulse to run away from his pain, yet he wants to redirect our running. Instead of running to the self-destructive way of coping mechanism, God wants us to run to him And there in His presence, He wants to teach us to listen to His gentle whisper. You know the rest of the story, when actually God showed Elijah in a place to meet him, the appointment to meet him. And there was earthquake, there was great wind, there was so many things, so many dramatic things. But God was not in those dramatic things. In the end, God was in the gentle whisper, still small voice. It was in the calm, soft answer that a person like Elijah, the depressed person, get comforted. He was comforted. He had no energy to lift himself up and make the journey to meet God. But the moment was right. God provided the energy. God helped him to meet him, to revive him with the still small voice. You know, God was not finished with Elijah yet. God wanted to give Elijah something better. While Elijah wanted to die under the broom tree, God actually still sees that the best day is not there yet. God wants Elijah to experience another fire from heaven, the chariot of fire. God has chosen him a student, Elisha, for him to train, a student that has a double portion of Elijah's spirit. So the best was yet to come, for Elijah. But Elijah, at that moment, the broom tree, after Carmel, he could not see. But God was kind to him. God actually even gave him a life without experiencing death. What amazing. So let us remember this, that, even though we have challenging time, God is always there with us. God saw things differently. He knew the better days is ahead for Elijah. He was going to give Elijah the victory so that there is another better prophet for the kingdom of Israel. This is very important for us. It is at the time of the greatest weakness that Satan assailed the soul with the fiercest temptation. It was thus that he hoped to prevail as the Son of God, for by this policy he has gained many victories over men, like Elijah. So it is with us today. When we are encompassed with doubt, perplexed with circumstances, or afflicted by poverties or distress, Satan seeks to shake our confidence in God, Jehovah. It is then that he arrays before us our mistakes and tempts us to distrust God, to question his love. Satan hopes to discourage the soul and break our hold on God. Despondency may shake the most heroic faith and weakens the most steadfast will, but God understands. He still pities and loves. He reads the motives and the purposes of the heart. To wait patiently, to trust when everything looks dark, is the lesson we need to learn. Heaven will not fail us in our day of adversity. Nothing is apparently more helpless, yet really more invincible than the soul that feels its nothingness and relies wholly on God. You can imagine, when you really feel you are nothing, and you really jump and rely totally on God, that's when you become really invincible. Invincible against the darts, against the assail of Satan, against the challenges of this life. So where are you today? If you are Elijah on Mount Carmel, praise the Lord. But remember, in life, we are not always on top of the mountain. So don't miss the sound of God's still small voice. Listen to him. If you are Elijah after Mount Carmel, if you are Elijah under the broom tree, then don't be discouraged, because there is hope. God sees things differently. God understands. He wants to free you from your guilt. He wants to work through others to provide practical help for you. And He will not fail to give you the energy to meet with Him again. Your best days are yet to come as you listen to God and follow that still small voice. May God bless and guide us. Let us give and allow Him to do His part.